NASA says its Voyager 1 probe, the most distant human-made object in the universe, is sending usable information.
Voyager 1, the most distant human-made object in existence, is still transmitting usable data to Earth. That fact alone is astonishing. Launched in 1977, the spacecraft was never meant to survive beyond the outer planets. Yet nearly half a century later, it continues its journey through the stars, drifting farther into the unknown than anything humanity has ever built. What makes this announcement historic, however, is not just that Voyager is still functioning. It's that it may have detected something inexplicable, something that defies our models, our expectations, and perhaps even our imagination. For over 4 decades, Voyager 1 has moved steadily away from the Sun, a silent witness to the cold majesty of the outer solar system and beyond. After passing Jupiter and Saturn in its early years, it sailed into the heliosheath, the turbulent region where the solar wind collides with interstellar matter. Eventually, in 2012, it crossed the heliopause, the threshold where the influence of our Sun ends and true interstellar space begins. Out there, in the great ocean between stars, Voyager has no destination. It simply drifts, alone and unsteered. And yet, despite the unimaginable distance, now more than 15 billion miles from Earth, it still speaks to us, its faint signals captured by the Deep Space Network and decoded by the engineers and scientists who have nurtured its mission across generations. For years, those signals were steady and predictable. Voyager reported on plasma density, magnetic field strength, and cosmic ray particles. Most of the data, though valuable, was routine, a gentle hum of science continuing as expected. But recently, something changed. The probe began transmitting an unusual signal, a low-frequency fluctuation that didn't match anything Voyager had encountered before. Initially, the pulses were subtle, nearly indistinguishable from background radiation. But over time, they formed a pattern. The electromagnetic waves pulsed with regularity, exhibiting a rhythm that stood out from the chaos of space. These were not random variations or interference from the spacecraft itself. They had structure, purpose, and increasingly they appeared to come from nowhere. Voyager 1 was moving through a region of space that by all accounts should be quiet. There are no nearby stars, no planets, no objects within range large enough to produce a gravitational signature. And yet, the signal came, growing slowly in intensity, fluctuating as though something in the void was moving or changing. The data showed consistency across multiple instruments, with no signs of internal failure or calibration drift. Earth-based observatories confirmed the anomaly, parsing the weak signal through layers of cosmic static and identifying the same strange, repeating waveform. Whatever this was, it was real, and it was not an artifact of human error. As researchers examined the signal more closely, the pattern became even more puzzling. It wasn't just rhythmic, it was complex. The waveform displayed properties similar to fractals, patterns within patterns, recursive structures that hinted at mathematical sophistication. The signal seemed to echo principles found in chaos theory and nonlinear systems. More startling still was the discovery of embedded sequences of prime numbers, distinct markers long proposed as a universal language of intelligence. Unlike other mathematical patterns, prime numbers are difficult to mistake for natural phenomena. They are deliberate, universal, and widely theorized as the kind of structure an advanced civilization might use to signal across the stars. This raised the stakes. If the signal was natural, it would require the discovery of a new class of cosmic phenomena, something never before seen or theorized. But if it was artificial, if it was constructed, then Voyager 1 had just become the first human creation to receive what could be the echo of intelligent communication. The possibility was electrifying and terrifying. It demanded scrutiny, caution, and above all, humility. What kind of entity could generate a signal so refined, so persistent, and so carefully hidden in the void? And why would it only now become detectable? Adding to the mystery was a second, fainter pulse nested within the original transmission. At first, it was considered noise, but when the waveform was isolated and enhanced, it revealed its own structure. This secondary signal included subtle time delays, echoes, reflections, distortions that seemed to suggest distance. Researchers realized that these anomalies might represent the workings of a relay system. with Voyager acting as a passive participant in something much larger. The delays did not correspond to the spacecraft's location or velocity, but hinted at sources light years beyond its current position. Some speculated that Voyager had stumbled into a communications lattice, an interstellar network operating on timescales and distances so vast they challenge our very notion of transmission. Then, just as abruptly as it had started, the signal ceased. It did not fade, it did not weaken, it stopped. One moment the structured pulses were present, repeating with clockwork precision. The next, Voyager returned to silence. The suddenness of the cutoff was unnerving, like a door slamming shut. And yet, the aftermath was even more puzzling. Voyager's systems began exhibiting anomalies, strange telemetry, inconsistent energy readings, and faint gravitational perturbations that had no clear origin. The spacecraft, built in the analog age, had become host to a digital ghost. It was as if the signal had left an imprint on its circuitry, a fingerprint from something unknowable. Then came the most inexplicable development. Voyager 1's trajectory shifted. The change was small, barely perceptible over days, but real. Its velocity and orientation deviated from the predicted course in a way that could not be explained by gravitational interactions with known celestial bodies. Nor could it be attributed to internal propulsion or gas leaks, which had long been ruled out. The only plausible explanation was that something invisible had exerted force on the probe, perhaps a field, perhaps a mass, perhaps a presence that we cannot yet see. Theories flooded in. Some suggested Voyager had passed near a rogue planet, a dark object wandering interstellar space. Others proposed that the spacecraft had brushed against a long-dormant construct, an artificial structure hidden in the folds of space-time, its presence revealed only by its interaction with Voyager's systems. Still others reached further, imagining that Voyager had been noticed by something sentient, something vast and non-corporeal, a being whose perception of time and space dwarfed ours. In this view, Voyager was not a visitor but an intruder. Its simple broadcast a knock on the door of something ancient and aware. Even among conservative circles, the debate shifted from what Voyager had detected to what it might have triggered. Had the spacecraft stumbled upon a warning system, a forgotten beacon, an observation platform left behind by a civilization long vanished? Or had it simply drifted through the outer edge of a phenomenon so far beyond human understanding that our words for it, intelligence, machine, consciousness, are hopelessly inadequate? What followed was silence. The signal did not return, but the disturbances in Voyager's instruments did not fade. They lingered, subtle, haunting, persistent. As scientists continued to sift through the data, they found more anomalies buried in the transmissions, shifts in frequency that did not match any known cause, radiation spikes inconsistent with Voyager's location, and minor deviations in its onboard clocks. These changes were not catastrophic, but they were real. The spacecraft had been affected, not broken, but changed. Inside NASA and affiliated observatories, the tone grew reverent. The engineers and scientists who had worked on Voyager for decades found themselves standing at the edge of something they couldn't quantify. This was no longer just a technical anomaly or an astrophysical curiosity. It was a story, a moment in which a machine built with slide rules and vacuum tubes may have whispered across a chasm in understanding, and someone or something may have whispered back. The implications of such an event are vast. If the signal was truly artificial, it would suggest not only the existence of intelligent life beyond Earth, but of a civilization capable of communicating across impossible distances. A civilization whose technological abilities would be, by our standards, indistinguishable from magic. It would mean we are not the only species to wonder, to build, to reach, and if the signal was natural, if it came from a force or structure we have never conceived, it would still require a rewrite of physical law, a rethinking of everything we thought we knew about the fabric of the cosmos. In either case, Voyager 1 would stand not only as a machine, but as a messenger. It would become the first object to leave our solar system and bring back more than data. It would bring back a question, one that doesn't fit neatly into science or belief, one that cannot be answered with a formula or an image or a theory, one that only grows louder in the silence that followed. There are those who believe Voyager encountered a remnant, an automated system left behind by a vanished race, drifting patiently across the centuries. Others imagine a kind of living intelligence, not biological but electromagnetic, sentient fields of energy, beings born not of carbon and water but of gravity and light. And still others suggest that Voyager may have entered a zone in space unlike any other, an area where information itself is stored, compressed, or exchanged, where reality bends in ways our minds are not yet ready to process. Whatever the truth, it is clear that something happened, something unpredicted, something real. The silence that followed the signal is not emptiness, it is resonance, a quiet that speaks louder than noise, a void that feels inhabited. Voyager 1, once thought to be a relic of the past, has become a bridge to something new, not just in terms of space, but in terms of meaning. In a time when our species looks inward with uncertainty, it offers a reminder that we are still explorers, still dreamers, still capable of finding the unexpected in the vast, cold, dark. And perhaps, most profoundly, it reminds us that we are not alone, not anymore. What Voyager 1 has uncovered, or perhaps what it has merely touched, is more than a mystery of science. It is a mystery of meaning. A spacecraft no larger than a compact car, powered by the fading embers of a 1970S nuclear battery, has drifted into a region of space where silence was expected, and heard something instead. That alone should make us pause, not just as scientists or explorers, but as human, because this isn't only about plasma waves and frequencies. It's about what it means to listen, to reach, to wonder whether something or someone might be listening back. For decades, Voyager 1 was considered a marvel of engineering, yes, but also something of an afterthought, an aging relic on a preordained course, its purpose quietly ticking along while the world turned its attention elsewhere. But now, with one strange, unprovoked anomaly, it has returned to the center of the cosmic stage, not as a tool, not as a machine, but as a messenger. One that may have stumbled into a conversation already in progress, or awakened something ancient from its dormancy. Either way, it has shifted our understanding of space, not as a static backdrop, but as something dynamic, unpredictable, and perhaps even alive. The implications are staggering. If the signal is artificial, it means that we are not alone and that we have never been. It means that intelligence, perhaps older, more advanced, more patient than ours, has left its fingerprints on the universe, not in ruins or monuments or physical artifacts, but in patterns, frequencies, echoes. It means we live in a universe where thought can travel without bodies, where messages can be encoded in light and magnetism and still find their way across oceans of nothingness. But even if the signal is natural, if it emerges from a phenomenon beyond current scientific comprehension, that too is cause for awe, because it suggests that we still have so much to learn, that the cosmos still contains frontiers not only of distance, but of understanding, that nature still writes in dialects we have not yet deciphered. Voyager's discovery reminds us that wonder is not a feeling reserved for the past, not something lost with the Apollo era or confined to text. It is alive, it is still out there. And yet the emotional weight of this moment cannot be overstated. Voyager 1 is not just a machine in the void. It is a time capsule of who we were. It carries the golden record, our music, our greetings, our laughter, our heartbeat. It was our first true ambassador to the stars, not armored or weaponized, but open and curious, bearing not flags but songs. And now, after nearly half a century of silence, it may have received something in return. That poetic symmetry, our voice sent outward, a whisper returned, is more than symbolic. It is sacred. This is where science meets soul, because, for all our equations and instruments, Voyager 1's greatest achievement may not be in what it measures, but in what it awakens within us. It reminds us that we are not only creatures of Earth, but children of the universe, born of stardust, wired for meaning, propelled by questions we can never fully answer. It proves that even a small machine, crafted by imperfect hands, can carry the weight of our collective longing across unimaginable distances. And consider this: what if the signal was never meant for us? What if Voyager intercepted a transmission sent millennia ago, never intended for human ears? That too carries deep resonance, because it speaks to the possibility that the universe is full of messages waiting to be heard, that we are surrounded not by silence, but by conversations too vast, too slow, too complex for us to yet perceive. And if that's true, then Voyager's detection is not an anomaly, it's an initiation, a moment in which humanity, long deaf to the deep rhythms of space, finally hears the first beat. In that light, Voyager 1's encounter becomes more than an event. It becomes a mirror, one held up to our species at a time when we so desperately need perspective. In an age of division, distraction, and doubt, this little craft, now more than 15 billion miles away, reminds us of our shared identity. It doesn't belong to one country or one people. It belongs to all of us. It was built by many, launched by few, and watched over by generations. Its discovery, whatever it means, is not an American triumph or a NASA victory. It is a human moment. And this moment whispers to us something we have almost forgotten, that we are capable of wonder, that we still possess the courage to ask questions that might never be answered, that even in the cold dark between stars there is light, sometimes faint, sometimes strange, but always pointing forward. Voyager 1 now travels into that mystery. It moves not toward a planet or a star or even a known direction. It simply continues. A quiet sentinel drifting on a current of inertia, bearing our questions into the night. And perhaps that is its final gift. Not a conclusion, but a continuation. Not an answer, but an invitation. Because if something out there responded, or even if something out there simply exists, then we must decide what we will do with that knowledge. Will we retreat? Will we reduce the unexplainable to coincidence? Or will we rise to meet it with curiosity, humility, and the determination to know more? The story of Voyager 1 isn't over. If anything, it has just begun a new chapter. A chapter that asks us to listen more deeply, to look more closely, to dream more boldly, and to remember that the most extraordinary discoveries often come not with noise and spectacle, but with silence and the courage to hear what lies within it. We may never know exactly what Voyager 1 encountered, but that doesn't diminish the wonder. It enhances it. Because wonder does not require certainty, it requires attention. And if this moment teaches us anything, it is that the universe is watching, listening, waiting. And now, perhaps for the first time in our species' short history, we are listening too.